All right, well, welcome to ASL's. I was able to take this nice young Ohio buck this morning, and really happy with him. He came in from the south I saw him about 50 yards away, and he made a rub and a scrape about 20 yards, and watched him for a little bit, and then he came straight in front of my stand, shot him about 12 yards, clean pass through, shot him a little bit back, but he walked about 20 yards after that, and stood there for a little bit, laid down, and expired. So I shot him with my Yukon stick. It's a two-piece takedown. It's got the G10 riser, and it's cut to center shelf. It's a 54 at 28.5 pound bow. Pretty little thing, and put the arrow clean through.
So my name's Paul McCard, and I'm from Herrin, Illinois, which is in the southern tip of the state. I've been shooting for about 35 years, been shooting ASLs for about 16, and been deer hunting about 30 years, about the same. So my favorite style of bow is the ASL, and what originally attracted me to them was just the simplicity and the history of them, of course. I think we were all drawn to that to begin with. And then once I got it and got used to it and kind of worked through all the kinks and what are the known troublemakers with them, I came to learn that really they're, in my opinion, the best hunting tool there is. They're the most reliable and easiest to shoot once you get used to them. One of the quirks kind of with them is that you really have to dedicate yourself to them. If you half-ass them and shoot this one day and you recurve another day in a compound, you're going to really struggle with it. You have to dedicate yourself to it and kind of quit thinking about the excuses of why they're not as accurate. They're just such a good tool for what we do. It's like a really good hunting knife. They're only as good as the edge you can put on them. So if you can't put a great edge on it, and by edge I mean you have to, once you get the bow, you have to tune it and you have to learn how to shoot it. It's not super hard, it's just a little different than, say, a metal risered recurve. I'm really a target competitive archer and also a hunter. Started out as a hunter and still really, obviously if I had to pick between the two, I would still be a hunter. I do basically the same thing for competition and hunting. A couple of the differences is for tournaments I use a tab, for hunting I use a glove, just because I always have, and to me it's second nature and I don't have to worry about losing it. Again, in my opinion, a tab is more accurate, but at the distances we're shooting hunting, it's not that big of a difference. It just, a glove feels more natural to me and I don't have to think about it a lot. For hunting, I'm not instinctive, but I'm more instinctual with my shot. I don't judge yardage until I get to around 25 yards. For tournaments, I do judge yardage, and I have different gaps for every yard. Hunting, I don't do that. I go off the size of the deer because, contrary to tournaments, we're just hunting deer. So all I have to know is the size of the deer. So I can go off of that for my aiming. So when I'm in the woods bow hunting, the only yardage I'm really concerned is my maximum yardage. So if that's 20 yards, so be it. If it's 12 for you or 30 for you, so be it. So I just want to know my point on, or where I'm hitting at my maximum yardage. So let's say a deer comes in at 12. These bows, for me, point and shoot so well, which is what endears them to hunting, is that you don't have to aim a whole lot. If you shoot them enough, they're so pointable that you pretty much know where they're going to hit. Now, that's not truly instinctive, but it's pretty close. So my typical shot sequence for hunting, and again, this is just my opinion, for these type of bows, the more laid back and relaxed you are, the better shot you're going to be. If you try and overthink it and and over aim and analyze the shot of these bows, it's gonna hurt you. So I just stand fairly comfortable. Doesn't really matter foot placement for hunting, and I do pay pretty close attention to my grip. I like my hand to be up touching the arrow. That way I know where it's at and I don't really have to look at it. And I do shoot 3 under just because I always have, and that's how I learned. I come straight up and hold, straight back, and that's it.
My name is Josh Miller. I'm from Neelyville, Missouri.
You gotta say like you do on your YouTube videos.
Hey, what's up, Josh?
What's up, guys? Josh here.
Oh, you want me to do it for real?
No.
Hey guys, what's up? Josh. No, I'm teasing. All right, here we go. My name is Josh Miller. I'm from Neelyville, Missouri. That is in the Boot Hill of Missouri, right along the Arkansas-Missouri border. I've been shooting traditional archery for about 5.5, almost 6 years now, and been enjoying every single moment of it. Currently, my favorite style is the longbow. It doesn't matter. I shoot them all, and I love them all. Currently, I am shooting my ASLs way more than, say, my reflex deflex, mostly because it is such a journey of challenges, and all of the rewards that you get during this challenge has been very, very rewarding. So would definitely recommend ASLs over any style bow. So what originally drove me to ASLs was just that, the challenge. It was kind of a surprise. I actually was shooting a prototype for Eric Hoff at St. Patrick Lake Longbows, and whenever I first got it, it was so much more difficult because I didn't know what I was doing. And after visiting a little bit, giving up, coming back to it a few times, it was just that, a challenge. And whenever I finally got the hang of it and was starting to shoot really well, it was more like, as in the bush, a romantic dance with the bow, and it's just so rewarding. So my general shot process starts from the ground up. So what I like to do is whenever I'm teaching new beginners is I'll actually have them set their feet together out, like so. And that ends up being about shoulder width apart. So you want a good solid stance to start off. The next thing I'll do is I'll actually come into my grip and setting my hook. What I like to do is after I knock, I'll actually drop it down to the ground and I'll start to set my hook. As I set my hook, I'll actually run my finger across a locator and I'll actually set my grip as I'm putting a little bit of tension. So once I get that tension set, and I keep my fingers curled loosely on the back in a 45-degree angle. I like to keep a pocket here because it allows the bow to kind of work with me versus me death gripping and going with the bow. So that just allows the bow to work with me versus me working with the bow. After that, I have my tension set. I'll actually come into a pre-draw and I'll actually bring it up in relation to a clock, to a 1 to 2 o'clock cant. So as I'm bringing that up, it's almost as a pendulum. So as I bring it up to a pre-draw, I come back down, bringing the bottom limb tip to a 7 o'clock position. And as I'm bringing it down, I am drawing and reaching anchor. My anchor is middle finger to the corner of the mouth, and also this knuckle right here into the back portion. It's kind of a little hard to see with all his beard, but the pressure point of the bottom jaw is where I like to rest that knuckle with a C cup of the fingers. So as it comes up, pre-draw, coming in, anchor, and I like to touch the feather to my nose. So as I'm drawing, I'm giving myself a second to settle, relax after the aim. And then I just go through my commitment. Does everything feel good? Do my anchors feel good? Did the pre-draw grip? Does everything feel good to where I can continue to the next shot process, or the next step in my shot process, which is expansion. As I'm expanding, I'm trying to touch the feather to nose. So coming up pre-draw, come into my anchor, and then I'll get my aim, relax for a second. Does everything feel good? Yes. I'll start to expand through my back. And then I do not move. Everything is a statue until after that arrow hits. And then you can go to your conclusion. Was everything good? Could I improve anything? And then only praise the good shots. Give yourself a good boost through self-confidence, saying, I can do that anytime I want. and you're always praising the good shots. And what that's doing is it's just building your self-confidence, and it's keeping the bad shots out of your shot process.
All right, my name is Eric Hoff. I'm from Detroit Lakes, Minnesota. Live on a little lake called St. Patrick Lake, which is where the name St. Patrick Lake Longbows comes from. And I've been shooting bows since I was about 9 years old. I started with compound and got into traditional, I don't know how many years ago now, but been building for, I believe it's between 9 and 10 years now, but really seriously for probably about 5 or 6, well, about 6 years now. And I really prefer the ASLs. I just kind of fell in love with them after picking up a bow from after Maurice Cash had passed away. He used to build ASLs in Michigan, and that's the ASL I learned to build on, or learned to shoot on, and then decided I loved it enough I needed to design one. So what initially attracted me to the ASL was just, I mean, the simple beauty of the D style, the look of it. I honestly think that there is really something to watching a slow arrow spin as it flies down range, and ASLs are typically slightly slower than, you know, a regular longbow or a recurve. But once you get that perfect shot, there's absolutely nothing like it. So my typical shot process is, I guess it's honestly fairly simple. I'm not a target guy. I'm a hunter only. I do shoot, I mean, I'm myself at targets at home. I've got a little 3D range and stuff just for practice, but no competition for me, although I do think it's a very valuable thing to learn, you know, to shoot under pressure. But my shot process, basically, I mean, I think grip's really important. I don't grip these a ton different than I do anything else. Kind of use the lifeline in my hand to go up against the edge of the grip. You can see on my grip where all my grip pressure goes directly through the center of the riser, which is where the center of the tiller is designed to be on my ASLs anyway. I'm a 3 undershooter, so I grab directly underneath the knock. Most of my pressure is on my upper 2 fingers, not much on my third. It's just kind of a guide to keep my hand and wrist in alignment. And I just kind of come up. One thing I've been working on is making sure that I keep my bow arm shoulder locked down low. That really helps me get pointed on. And then draw back with, I don't want any tension in my forearm when I get back here. This whole this forearm should be relaxed. Your wrist should be relaxed. Your handle or your wrist will actually spin, so you don't have to, you know, you're not going to actually torque the string if you allow your wrist to turn when you come back here, and you can only do that if you don't have tension in your forearm. So I come up, come back. I use the string against my eyebrow as an alignment thing to make sure that I am aligned over the arrow. And this is my bloody arrow from a deer I shot this morning, but it's, to me, it's coming back, making sure my grip pressure is through, making sure that my eye is over the arrow, and then letting go, making sure you're pulling through as you release.
Hey everyone, my name's Ben Maher. I'm here to talk with the Push family about bow hunting and archery, and more than anything, about ASLs, hill style longbows. I've been shooting bows and arrows since maybe I was 6 years old, and that all started when I watched Errol Flynn's Robin Hood with my dad on one Saturday afternoon. And I think probably an hour later I was out in the back garden with a stick and a bit of string, and away I went. And that started a passion that's still going today. Yeah, and I'm still bow hunting a lot. I'm still competing a lot. My main love is longbows. I have lots of recurves. I have lots of deflex, reflex longbows. But my one true love is ASLs. I've shot them for a long time now. I've been shooting these since on and off since 1988, and then there was a period from about 2000 to about 2012, I hunted with very little else. These were my go-to bows, and that fire's been lit again underneath me. I've shot them on and off since, but I'm back shooting them with a passion, and so yeah, that's what we're going to talk about.
So I became so enamoured with ASL Hill style, I actually became a dealer in Australia for Howard Hill and for Jim Belcher with his line of Union Jacks and various other things. So I got pretty good at setting up bows. I noticed one thing that has changed. If you look at this one, so this is one from Craig at Howard Hill. So that's 50 at 26, back when before I changed my form, with some help from Tom and Joel. I was drawing 26 inches, and I still very much had a bent arm and a swing draw. Since then, my draw length's crept out to 29 inches. So that bow, it's a beautiful bow, but it's way too much poundage. These days I'm pulling about 50 at 29 generally. So this is a St Patrick Lake Yukon. That's that's from Jim Belcher and Georgia at Bivouac Bows. That's an all-U Union Jack. Beautiful bow, very fast. In terms of my arrow setup, generally, if I'm shooting deflex reflex bows, if I'm shooting recurves, they've normally got a bow quiver on them. I just can't bring myself most of the time to put a bow quiver on a hill bow or an ASL. And it's a back quiver, and it's a back quiver full of woodies. I get most of my woodies from Shorewood Shafts or Wapiti Archery. And generally, if I'm pulling 50 pounds, I'm looking for between a 490 and 530 grain arrow. I tend to set them up slightly differently than my other bows, and that's still a fallback to when I was studying Schultz and studying Hill, in that if you look at my blunts are pulled net. So when I draw, the blunt actually comes back over my finger. I'm still shooting split. Always been a split finger shooter. I know there's great value in going to 3 under, but I'm a little bit old in the tooth, and for IFAA shooting I still have to shoot split. One of the things you'll notice also that operates similarly the same way is when I come to full draw and I've got a broadhead on there. I use a slightly higher spine shaft, but I leave a good ½ an inch, and that broadhead coming back and hitting my finger acts as a trigger. It takes a while to get used to, but I spent many years doing it, so getting back there slowly.
So the way I hunt, especially in southern Illinois, there's a lot of pressure. So I hunt in thickets where guys can't be in the trees. So I'm a ground hunter. I have for probably 15 years now. Just pretty much exclusively hunt on the ground. And that was just a necessary need at the time to learn how to hunt the thickets. And over the years I've come to like it and learn a lot of the tricks and that. And my main one is hunting on a really short stool. I've tried the taller seats and buckets, and the deer just seem like they pick you out. So when you're right almost on the ground, this just keeps you from getting wet. When you're lower down, they don't seem to notice you as bad, and it's easier to kind of camouflage yourself in. And I always set up 90 degrees to the trail. So if the trail is running out in front of me, I want my feet running along with it. That way I can just raise up and shoot, just like that. And if you see the deer coming, I get up on my knees and kind of readjust a little bit. But sometimes in thickets, you just have a few seconds just to raise up and shoot them. Of course, this is a mowed area, but you know, in the woods, I do clear a pretty big spot out because I typically will lay my bow like that. That way I'm not holding it all the time, and if a deer comes, I can just pick it up and be ready to shoot. I can stretch my legs out in front of me and shoot. I sit with mine like this because you want to be comfortable and not fidgeting as much, because you are right in their eye line, and they'll see if you're moving too much. So as far as setup for this, you want some stuff in front of you, but not too much. You know, if you have a big wall of brush in front of you, you can't shoot. In the thickets, there's going to be plenty of brush out 5-10 yards from you anyway. What I like is, you know, logs and stuff piled like that, and I'll get up behind it. Your backdrop is way more important than what's in front of you, without a doubt. It took me a while to learn that, but it's true. So this is a little bit more of a realistic setup with the backdrop behind me, and you know, say there's just like we would set up a deer trail, you know, 12-15 yards in front of us. If the deer come from the left, I can get my bow and shoot from here all the way to in front of me. If I have an opportunity to see him coming from towards me, I'll just get up a little more gracefully than this on my knees, and I can get down and shoot all the way from here all the way to back behind me. It just gets you lower to the ground to where they're not looking for you quite as much.
All right, so we're up in a tree stand. Typically, I hunt from a summit climber, and I generally have a rail around me. Now, that's usually not ideal, but it's like anything else. Once you adapt to what you're using, it's second nature, pretty much. So for just video purposes, I'm up maybe 6 feet, not very high at all, just enough to show you guys how I hunt from a tree stand. So typically, with my climber, I like to have a lot of vegetation behind me up high. So what I'll do is I'll actually climb up to where I have some branches coming down, just enough, but high enough that my limb clears, just in case if I'm swinging around or something to that matter. As I'm hunting with a rail, I like to come up close to it. I generally do have on a waist strap that keeps me to the tree, but I'll actually come up as close as I can to that rail, feeling it. And then my bow is actually hanging over. So as I'm drawing, that will be clear from the rail. There's a little bit of two different ways that I draw, depending on the angle. If it's something really steep and I know that they're going to be coming in close, I'll try to set my bow in the angle of their path before they ever get there. Because I'm just anticipating that angle coming up to where if they're close, I can just draw back, come and shoot. There are other scenarios where they're a little bit further out and I'm still having a tough time picking out where my window's going to be. And at that time, it's just kind of like playing it as it comes around. So with that, I will actually draw just like I've always done, tournament style. And let's just say they're about 15, 20 degrees, nothing too significant, out at like 20 yards. Then at that case, I'm going to draw and then bend at the hips. So if I'm wanting to come down, something that was taught to me is swing your hips out. So for shooting up, typically we're not going to be shooting anything in the air, but for shooting out, swing your hips in, shooting down, swing your hips out. So that is something that you would see more in tournament style shooting, but it actually relates to a little bit of deer hunting, especially for me. Generally what I like to do, like I said, is I like to keep a little bit of vegetation to the back of me, because if they're going to be coming up, of course, you know, I'm kind of blended in. I do clear everything in front of me. I did make a mistake once of shooting without paying attention, and say if this limb was just maybe 4 inches lower and I'm drawing up, I would have to be more aware of that. So, and I've actually hit top limbs, because this is like a 68-inch bow. ASLs can come in anywhere from 66 to 70 inches. So the most important thing whenever it comes to hunting with an ASL is being aware of your surrounding more in the front and upper. The lower limb I'm not too worried about because I am clear until I get more into you know, coming around the backside, which I'm typically not going to be shooting at. I'm going to be setting up, knowing where my deer are already coming through, and work with that in my climbing situation. Okay, so I've got a target maybe about 8-9 yards. Once again, I'm not very high, maybe 6-7 feet off the ground. So what I'm going to do is, as I'm anticipating that I do have a really nice clearing here, I'm going to anticipate that deer coming. So I'm going to work into this position before it ever gets there. And then as it comes in, generally to where the head is a little bit further than what I'm, where I'm at. And then from there, just coming straight back to anchor and releasing. So the other shot would be if it's a little bit further and just working with the terrain that is around you. So if it's going to be, 30 degrees or less and it's over 20 yards, this is just kind of guessing without being in the scenario. That's whenever I'll do more of a target style draw and then swing with the hips. And what that does is that just gives me more confidence in my shot process. So I just feel more accurate than something like, say, a swing draw or a quick snapshot. So at this case, this is where I'm going to draw, anchor, just like everything else, and I'm going to swing my hips out. So draw, anchor, swing hips out, it's going to come down. Everything's staying a statue, bow arm and everything else is statue. Swing out, and that's where you're going to release.
So a lot of people are concerned about shooting a 68-inch bow out of a tree stand, and while there are some limitations to it, it's still extremely maneuverable, and you really just learn to set up around those limitations. But in reality, I mean, I can shoot probably, I don't know, they're 120, 130 degrees behind without too much issue. Where it becomes an issue is, especially standing, when you're shooting behind, you have to worry about your lower limb hitting the seat. Some stands you have to worry about the lower limb hitting the cable, depending on how that comes down. And so then you're just limited that little bit that way. You can still shoot all the way around you and all the way around this way until your upper limb becomes an issue with the tree. And so you really just learn to set up around that. And there's sitting, it becomes less of an issue with the seat, but you still have to watch your tree when with your lower limb. But really, I'm probably 110 degrees past 90 right now, and it's not an issue. So you really just learn to set up around it. I typically will set up my tree stands to shoot straight out from me. And then anything that comes on my left, I'll shoot seated. And sometimes if it's straight out, I'll shoot with my seated just turned. And then anything over to the right, I'm gonna stand as long as that's a possibility. Otherwise, I'll just let that walk because there's no possibility of an ethical shot from a seated position for myself anyway. Say they're 15 yards or so, I've got my natural between 1 and 2 o'clock cant, but as they get closer, I'm bending at the hip, but my frame is staying the same, but my cant is, in relation to my body, it's staying the same, but my cant in relation to, say, the ground and the deer is changing, and it's maintaining my alignment with my eye, though, as far as that goes.
All right, so we're out here on a 3D course. We're just going through and kind of working on how we actually practice. So depending on what you want to do, whether you're going to be hunting or 3D tournament style, whatever, you want to try to practice that way. So we're just having fun today. We're just going to go through and work on what we actually run through during competition.
I agree that that's a great way to practice, and we both shoot a lot of 3Ds whenever we can. Another way, especially when I first started, a really good way of practicing, in my opinion, is stump shooting. In fact, I would take a wiffle ball and wrap some duct tape around it to give it some weight, and I just go in the woods and just throw it and use judo points or blunts and shoot at that. It gives you practice at judging yardage and shooting in brush and just the natural environment you would be hunting in. It's not cleared lanes, but stump shooting, in my opinion, is really underrated. I still do it. My wife and I go quite a bit in the winter. That's it.
So my arrow setup, typically with longbows, like to use wood, generally because I do a lot of 3D competition, and most of them require a longbow to be shooting wood. I like to shoot Port Orford cedar, but I've also shot everything from Sitka spruce, Douglas fir. Typically, I lean more towards Port Orford cedar because it's easily able to straighten, and it typically holds for the most part. And of course, it just feels natural shooting wooden arrows from something that is so simple and doesn't require a lot. I have not really had a lot of experience with carbons and aluminum or anything like that. I just typically shoot a lot of wood, and it is generally my go-to. Okay, so I am shooting Port Orford cedar. This year I've actually swapped to a 125 up front. We're gonna see how it goes. Typically I like to shoot 160 grains, but they've been proven time in and time out, and I'm gonna give it a chance. I typically run with my ASLs. I do like 5-inch feathers. A lot of people are more leaning on the 3 or 4-inch feathers. I've just always shot 5, and it feels natural to me. I get good flight, so I'm just going to continue to use them. The cons of using 5-inch feathers is also rain, and it does catch a lot of wind. So more typically in your open shots, if it's anything 20 yards or further, depending on the gust and the crosswind, you're going to get more of an erratic flight. Not something ideal, but once again, it's just something that I've worked with, and I typically shoot fairly well with 5-inch feathers.
So I'll talk to you a little bit about my arrows. Much like Josh, for tournaments, in longbow we have to shoot wood arrows. I shoot Port Orford cedar also. I shoot 4-inch feathers. Just have for several years and have just got used to it. I'm not saying they're better or worse, it's just what I shoot. As far as spine, what works for me, it might not work for the next guy. I'm normally about 5 pounds heavier on spine than bow weight. Seems to work out really good for me. And I hunt with woods, but I also like aluminums. For me, the tunability on aluminum is really nice, and it just kind of, again, it's the history part of it. That's what I started with, and I just like them.
Go over my arrow setup a little bit. I'm actually shooting a microcarbon out of my Yukon stick. So they're a 165 diameter Vector HMRs. They've got a 54 grain outsert, and then I've got iron will wide 200 grain broadheads on the front. Scary sharp. Absolutely love these broadheads. So I've shot wood for years, and I still do out of my Pacific stick and American stick. But this Yukon being cut to center gives you some advantage, and I just push that a little further by going with a micro because it brings you that much closer to center. And carbon is really, really easy to tune. They're forgiving. And they're just, quite honestly, it's simple to go buy a shaft and put fletchings on it rather than having to go through all the cresting and, and everything with a wood arrow. Don't get me wrong, I love wood. There's a romantic side of shooting that, and there's really nothing like that. But carbon it's simple. It's always going to be straight or broken, and they're really efficient.
My aiming. So my aiming is the same with these bows and all my other bows. What I try and set up is a 40-yard point on. So the shorter arrows help, because obviously my other bows, they're a bit quicker than these. These are not fast bows. They're not slow, but they're not fast bows. But my other bows are that little bit quicker. So that shorter arrow length helps me get that 40-yard point on. That way, really my sight picture, I prefer to think of sight picture rather than gaps, because out to 30, I'm what would be referred to by many on the internet as instinctive. But once we get to 30, I'm starting to notice the tip of the arrow, and once we're at 40, I'm using a pretty hard gap. Hopefully that'll come in handy as I get back into field shooting, where there's a lot of shots over 40 yards. But yeah, generally I'm an instinctive gapper, whatever that means. Out to 30, I'm just staring at what I want to hit. Obviously I can see the arrow, but I'm not taking any conscious appreciation of where it sits in my sight picture. Once we're getting to 30, I'm starting to notice, and I'm starting to feel a little bit more slowing down, in that I'm taking a little bit more time to take notice where the arrow is going to sit. And then at 40, it's my back of point sitting on the target, and I'll lob them in there. So my anchor used to be this finger in the corner of my mouth. Then I spent a lot of time with Tom Clum, and my anchor now is actually far more to do with my back and my scapular engagement. And so where that ends up on my face is it's that knuckle, the top knuckle on there is actually hitting my cheekbone, and the top knuckle on my thumb is sitting on my jaw. And as I come in, I engage my back, I lift my elbow slightly, and then it's all about my tricep going backwards.
All right, let's go ahead and dive into a few different types of ASLs, grips, and what each one of them bring to the table. So starting off, we'll start with the American stick. This is a string follow bow, and what that means is that the limb tips actually take set towards the belly side of the bow, away from the archer. And then of course, whenever it's strung, it takes the natural D shape. So this is a straight grip. There is nothing fancy about that. This is typically what 90% of your ASLs will come from standard. So there is no locator. There is nothing special about that. Okay. Following that, we have a prototype, the Mushin stick. And this is a backset bow. This is opposite of what your American stick is. So it actually takes set towards the back of the bow, away from the archer. And once again, whenever it is strung, it takes the natural shape of a D bow. And this is also a locator style grip. So what that means is it is actually still somewhat flat around the back, but it has a little bit more of a cutout here to give you more of a throat style locator. Typically, you're still going to want to put your heel pressure down, but this is just to allow somewhat of a more repeatable style grip. Following that, we have a northern stick. This is a reverse handle style, and this is also a string follow. And because it's on the opposite side, you would think it would go towards the back, but it's still coming towards the belly of the archer. And once it's strung, it also takes the shape of a D profile. This is also a straight grip. There's no locator, no dish, and it just gives you a different feel. It also allows you to put your hands more in line with the limb, so there's less room for torque, less error for torque. So the final bow we have here is a string follow bow. This is the Yukon stick. It's the sibling to the American stick, but this one has a nice G10 riser, and it allows it to be cut to center. So there's a few pros and a few, more or less few pros whenever you start to shoot G10. Adds a little bit more mass for stability in the hand, and it allows more of an open window for tunability. This is a string follow bow, again, like the American stick, so the tips fall towards the belly of the bow. Once again, has a D profile shape. And another thing about this is this is a takedown, a two-piece bolt system. So within the bow here, if you could see a little bit of a line, that's where the bow comes apart.
Okay, so we're doing a little bit more with the American stick here. This was kind of my baby. This is what I spent a ton of time designing the American stick. It was my first ASL. Bamboo cores, just a really smooth drawing, quick shooting ASL. Yeah, this one is a lot, I mean, it's a lot like the ASLs that were built a long time ago, you know, when Howard was building stuff. I did a little bit to it too. I moved where the center of the tiller naturally sits to make it a little more shootable and easily tunable and stuff. But it's really just a basic down-to-earth ASL. This particular one happens to have a carbon strip running in it, and it is it's 43 at 29 and plenty of power to take down most North American game.
That's Paul's bow.
What is this one spec'd at, Paul?
45 3/4.
Did I write that on there?
Yeah.
Really?
You dick.
Seriously?
Trying to crush and fall.
Oh, that's funny.
Thousands.
So this is the prototype motion stick, and this one has that locator grip on it. Paul McCarg actually did that locator himself, and it's an incredible feel. This one's got a diamond wood riser. I think it's the walnut version. Very beautiful. Adds a little bit of mass to it. The motion being back set, it's going to add give you a little bit more speed, a little more power, and also it's going to load in the draw cycle early, and it gives it a different feel, but it's a really, really nice feel. Pretty black and white.
I know, man. I don't shoot it because it's too pretty. Think I'm lying?
All right, so this is a Northern. This one brings to the table that it's almost impossible to torque because you're putting your grip pressure directly on the back or on the belly side of the limb. It's really impossible or really hard to make that bow turn because you're pushing right on it. You have to physically try to turn it to get that bow to torque. It also has the advantage that it has a higher brace height than a regular handled ASL, which also adds to a little bit of forgiveness. So we didn't talk about this before. This is a dished grip. This is kind of advantageous a lot for guys that are new to ASL. It really helps you to break your wrist and push through the center of the grip, which on my designs is where the center of the tiller point is meant to be. You can vary that a little bit with grip pressure and your finger pressures and stuff, but that's where it's built in and makes it really simple to tune. But like I said, new guys to ASL see a lot of success with that just because it forces you to break your wrist. So the Yukon stick, with the G10 riser, it has the advantage of being incredibly strong. It adds the mass. The biggest advantage is that it's the riser or the sight window is center cut, and so that allows for a bigger tuning window or bigger window of tune and a better sight picture or a bigger sight picture. But the other thing with this is it's portable because you can actually take it down. This is built with the bull bolt system, which is incredibly solid. There is absolutely no movement in the system when it's put together, and it feels exactly like a one piece. So it goes together with a simple half turn, and there's a stop in there so you can't go past. So it comes together and it feels exactly like a one-piece bow. The U-cores actually offer a slight performance advantage, but the biggest thing with U-cores is the feel. They have an incredibly soft feel, and they're actually soft. The longer draw guys actually feel like the U is soft in the back, further than bamboo is. You'll see a few feet per second performance advantage with U over bamboo as well. Plus it's downright gorgeous. The side profile of bows that are built with U or bows that have clear glass over U are absolutely stunning. So the straight grip, while it doesn't have any reference for or any locate built into it, and this is kind of I don't know if I want to call it a tribute to Howard, but they used to put in a piece of wood or leather to build out the shelf a little bit. And that's what this little tab is right there that comes underneath. What I really use it for personally is actually a locator and a reference to my grip. And so when I grip this bow, that little tab sits right on the front side of that knuckle, and I can feel that every time I grip it. And so that's my reference between that and my lifeline being right on the edge of the grip. It's really, really repeatable.
So one of the other things to probably bring up, because you see it a lot on the internet, is that people will tell you these bows are really forgiving to shoot. I think they're really good teachers, because if you're slightly off with these, you'll see it downrange where the arrow strikes. I don't find them super forgiving. I find them fun to shoot, and that they make you be a better archer. If you go and pick up your recurve after this, or your deflex reflex longbow, they will feel like bull barrel sniper rifles. These things are a bit harder to shoot. So I see a lot of that on the internet when people say, oh, you get one of these because they're really forgiving. I think forgiving's the wrong term. I think when everything aligns, they just shoot really nicely. And yeah, they have a little bit more thump at the shot. I set my bows up still with B55 strings. Having said that, I'm stretching this out on this bivouac from Jim, and that's a low stretch. It just seems to like a low stretch a little bit better. But yeah, my bows have B55 strings. I tend not to run silencers. We hunt a lot of small game, a lot of rabbits, a lot of foxes. B55 seems to be absolutely quiet enough. I don't run B55 on my other bows. They've all got low stretch string material, but these, it just seems to work really nicely. I like the string diameter, it fits the wooden nocks really well. There's probably better ways to do it, but that's just the way I do it. But they are harder to shoot. But that shouldn't stop you trying to shoot them. It's a thing, a day spent in a field with one of these and a back quiver full of woodies, a couple of your friends, some stumps, some rabbits, some flight shooting. It's a good way to spend a day. They seem to fit in the hand really well. They fit in that. There's an ethos around how we used to do it years ago. It still pertains today with lots of gear, but it seems to hark back to something simpler. And so I'm as technical as the next guy when I run an ILF rig. But with these, I run woody arrows. I don't care about AFOC. I try and run a good shot. I try and maintain tension. I try to keep the bow pushing towards the target. But more than anything, I have fun with it. And sometimes I've just got to remember in the midst of all the craziness with this wonderful lifestyle we have, that it's meant to be fun. And these are fun.
Starting off, somebody as a new archer, they're not going to be, as accurate. Like it's just like anything else, as Paul said earlier today. It takes a little bit of time to get used to it. So if you're shooting different style grips, different just models in general, and actually getting the feel of the bow, it's totally different from, coming from a different, I guess, part of archery. But with the time, it's just like anything else. With the time, the practice, the effort, and the willpower to put everything else to the side and just solely focus on that and what's your purpose with it, absolutely, you could be just as accurate with anything else. And that's if everything is done right. I still am a firm believer that they are not as more forgiving, they are not as more stable. I still do believe that. But what can be done with them is, just amazing. But it all depends on how much time and effort you're willing to put into it, if that makes sense.
Some people think that an ASL is not as accurate as a modern or a reflex deflex longbow or a recurve. I don't believe that. I think if you put them in a shooting machine and took the human error out of it, they would all shoot the same. Gary Davis years ago said that same thing about a self bow. Do I think they're by humans as easily shot as a recurve? No. I think you have to dedicate yourself to them a little bit more. But I also think people use it as an excuse a lot. Whether they mean to or not, they're shooting an ASL, so they don't have to be as accurate. And I disagree with that. I think if you learn the right way and dedicate your time to it, they're just as good as any shooter is.
So do I think ASLs are as accurate as recurves and R&D longbows? Yeah, I do. I think they definitely have the potential to be. I think the thing with ASLs is they demand perfection. Like, you have to do everything right. They're an incredibly great coach. If you do something wrong, you're not going to have an accurate shot. You're going to get feedback from the bow, whether that's through vibration or, you know, the shot going off to, you know, in the wrong direction. But if you do everything right and everything the way the bow wants you to shoot it, you can shoot just as well with an ASL as you can with a recurve or a longbow. So how long do you have to shoot an ASL before you become proficient? I think that's, you know, going to depend on the archer, obviously. I honestly think that an ASL is, you're going to love to shoot it, so you're probably going to want to shoot it more, and they're just plain fun to shoot. But you do have to shoot every shot with a purpose. I find myself just wanting to watch arrows fly and because they shoot so beautifully out of them. But if you shoot every shot with a purpose and dedicate yourself to the bow, I don't think it's going to take you any longer, as long as you've got good repeatable form, to become proficient with an ASL as to a recurve or a longbow.
So I would say, you know, for the question, how long would it take for somebody to get accurate with an ASL? That's going to 100% vary, because every archer is different. You know, if you are more driven versus somebody that's looking for it for recreational, what are you trying to do with it? What is your sole purpose of shooting an ASL? Are you inspired to it? Are you just trying to be good with it, compete? It all depends on every individual archer. You know, once again, going back to it, are you rotating bows? Are you getting frustrated with it? Are you, you know, just not spending the quality time with it? And like Eric said, every arrow has to have a purpose in order to create yourself to another level, get better to another level. So that is 100% on every single archer. I believe that if you have the basic mechanics down of, you know, gripping a bow, knowing the draw cycle, your own shot process coming into it, that's going to play a big factor on getting, you know, that's going to knock a big chunk of the learning curve off. So having a little bit of a background in archery is going to help. There is no time frame, but I do believe an archer can get to a above average state rather quickly. I would say, you know, a week or two of repetitive shooting and with a purpose. You know, and then there's going to be frustration whenever you're learning something new and getting into this. They're just a different animal. This isn't your typical recurve, you know, locator grip, you know, bow. It's just not. So having that frustration is going to turn a lot of people off, but what we do with that frustration and how we grow from that is what defines us as an archer. So I think somebody with that willpower and desire to learn to shoot it will take off rather quickly.
So, you know, the connection between the archer and the bow is thousands and thousands of years old. You know, the Indians counted on it for their living, and we count on it as entertainment. I'm not saying that compound archers don't have a connection with their bow. We do more so, I think, because we're just as much a part of it as the bow to a certain extent. We're not counting on a release and rest and sights. But the ASL and like the self bow also, they're just such a basic, simple design. They're pure and they know what their job is. We just have to impart what our part is. So I think you just have more of a connection with it versus, say, a metal risered recurve, which they're great, but you still, a lot of cases, have a rest and you have a, you know, custom grip and all that. It's just, they're not as basic and not as primitive as an ASL.
So, I think every archer that gets into ASLs, just you develop an intimate relationship with that bow. You get to know it. The bow almost develops around you as you get into it and shoot it. The bow actually will take a set to you, so it becomes like part of you. And I think it was Howard Hill had a bow that he called Grandpa and Grandma. He knew them so well, and you get an ASL that you fall in love with, and it just becomes an extension of your hand. And I think part of the way that you grip an ASL, most guys will have that the arrow is going to be riding right off of your pointer finger, which makes it really pointable. And so that if you do your part, do everything right, you know exactly where that arrow is going. The closer you can get your eye to that arrow, the more relationship you have with it, and the bow just flows with that. It's kind of I'm going to use the word romantic, but a beautiful romantic relationship between you and the bow.
So yeah, I totally agree with you too. You develop such a deeper relationship with this bow because of its roots and how far it goes down within the traditional archery spectrum, and just being able to go back to something that is so simple, that was designed, or Americanized here in the States. It gives you a pride to shoot it, and you just really embrace that. So there really is a deeper connection with that. I 100% agree. So a tip I would give to somebody looking into getting into ASLs, I usually always just say stay true to yourself and always keep everything with an open mind. But specific to ASLs, I would say with the frustration coming, as soon as you feel yourself starting to fade and you get to where you're just flinging arrows, not sending it with the purpose in the beginning, stop. It's okay to stop and reflect on what's going on. So the more you shoot, the more you create bad habits, and it's just going to prolong the learning curve into the ASL realm.
Well, anybody shooting ASL, not just beginners, but use the bow as a coach. The pure nature that an ASL demands you to shoot it perfectly or demands you to do everything right. The feedback that you get from that bow, whether it's an inaccurate shot or vibration or whatever it is, use that to realize that you're doing something wrong. You should be able, from that feedback, to get a rough idea of what you are doing, and correct that immediately, and continue to have a good shooting experience.
So the tip I would give to really anybody shooting an ASL, beginner or not, go to some shoots. You don't have to be competitive. You don't have to turn a score in. Just pick some good traditional shoots. I'm lucky enough where I live, I'm a few hours from Twin Oaks and Buck Hollow. Those guys are amazing. I mean, they'll help you. If you're ever to shoot and see somebody shooting an ASL, ask them to shoot it. They'll let you. That's how you learn. Try different bows. There's several good guys out there making ASLs. Try them. Not one bow is for every person. That's kind of the beauty of it. But once you find the bow that you really like, stick with it. And also another thing I would say is don't look at the ASL as lesser than an ILF recurve or a three-piece recurve or a longbow for that matter. They're just as good. And like I said earlier, for hunting, an ASL to me is the best hunting weapon there is. I wouldn't trade it for anything.